Welcome to the Be Well podcast, wellness backed by science, bringing you inspiring conversations to help you on your wellness journey to a healthier, happier you. Brought to you by Breast Cancer UK. You can start your personal prevention journey right now by taking our prevention quiz. Just click on the link in the show notes.
I'm seeing firsthand some of the wonderful work that community groups are certainly doing. I'm from the South Asian community, which is great. And I was on an England camp recently, and there was a South Asian girl in the under 15s. And that for me, I approached her and I said, I'm really proud to say that there is a girl with South Asian heritage wearing the England national shirt. And, that she should be proud, her family should be proud. And I had my final camp in May, and fingers crossed I get to see her then as well. You can have people like myself and others who will have the commitment and endeavour to keep persisting and want to create change on the pitch. But it takes such a wider team to help develop and nurture players. And that first and foremost comes from those who are committed to get them there. South Asian people in general within the professional game, but more so for me, my lens was on coaching and management. But I recognised, particularly with the book, that there was a real need to showcase and highlight those that are pioneering, but in different disciplines, because some may not want to be a footballer. Some may want to be a doctor, be a psychologist, be a sports scientist. And this was about illustrating that you can have a career in a football club, which doesn't just have to be as a player or be a coach. As much as it shares individuals who are pioneering in football across different disciplines, actually the premise of this was around positive mental health, around stories of resilience, and actually how we can really teach children to build these like muscles that we have in the brain to be adaptable, which in turn can then help kids to have these resilience skills that they can use not just in football but in life.
We couldn't do everything, but it's a very visible thing, the plastic issue. So as we were using and creating less waste, there was less in our bins. We'd, over the month, formed some new habits, which felt good. And, month is quite a good time to try and embed a new habit or practice into our lives. And people started to share it when they were taking their reusable cup to get a coffee, or having conversations around the dinner table or in their workplace. And it really grew by word of mouth. So we had 40 people in that first year, and then there was 400 the next year, and 4,000, and it just really it's grassroots. It wasn't an advertising budget. The top four were plastic bags, water bottles, straws, and the coffee cups, either plastic coffee cups or just paper cups lined with plastics and the plastic lid. Like, here are these common 4 items that it doesn't have to cost the earth. You can just say no. You can use what you have, what you already have. You can ask for no straw, take your own reusable one, whatever it was. Just pick one of those and try it for a day, try it for a week, try it for a month. And it was this way of visualizing the solutions, and right from the outset we didn't focus on the problem. Not that that there's a role for education, but we were always very focused on solutions and sharing solutions, sharing ideas, and also sharing stories about what other people do, because the plastics that I encounter and the alternatives available for me might not be the same as others. So it really was about lots of people making small changes and sharing those and encouraging other people to join in. When lots of people make small changes at the same time, that's when business and government notice, and that's when they start to make some of the systemic changes that we obviously need to turn around these wicked problems. And a lot of people say, think, what difference can I make? What difference does my one choice make? Or, I remember my bag on the first day and I got a straw on the second day. But when you see that there's millions and 100 million around the world taking part, it's really powerful. And I think that, seeing the way that not only people have taken it up in their own life, but taken it into their communities, into their workplaces, into their kids' schools, into their friendship groups and networks, is just this real positive, I think, testimony to the power of grassroots change.
I believe that it has given me so much more than it could ever take from me. Moving our bodies in the outdoors in a way that feels joyful for us as a form of preventative medicine, as a form of management of disease and illness, whether that's mental or physical illness. That's my number one, is however you seek to move with joy, and it can only bring benefit. Before I found trail running, I didn't really care about things like, I'll be honest in saying that, climate change or nature connection or nature conservation, because for me, and actually for many marginalized communities globally, because we feel that lack of connection, because many of our communities have been urbanized, or we come from impoverished backgrounds, so therefore access to the outdoors is an issue. Therefore, when you talk to us about climate change, or you talk to us about nature conservation, we're like, hey, I'm just trying to live. So therefore, it's so important. It was so important to me to feel at one with the environment around me, with the natural environment around me, and to feel that I had a sense of ownership. It really showed me the power of role modeling for women who see me, and I can say to them, I have been exactly where you are. I know exactly how you feel. I know what you're dealing with. If I don't know it, there's a woman in this group that knows it. And you can't buy that. You can't buy that kind of support. And my face-to-face women's running groups have grown year on year. And it led me into really understanding how to create, how to nurture, how to role model, how to build community through movement. There is something for me very soul affirming, as a woman, as a 46-year-old woman, as a mother and a grandmother, that I'm blessed to be able to know how to look after my body and progress my running in a way that I can do these hard things. That's what another thing I say is, and I say to other people, we can do hard things. And the people listening to this that are going through their own journeys, like, you can do hard things, whether that hard thing is just in the morning, getting out of bed, whether that hard thing is the strength to get to that appointment, or whether the hard thing for me when I'm doing these ultras is to run 210 miles.
That's incredible.
We launched Black Trail Runners in really what was a perfect storm in terms of our message getting across the world. And, we have grown year on year. We have thousands of members. Our initiatives are from grassroots level, social runs, community runs, like I've discussed today, right through to last year. We held our very first larger scale event, which was the most diverse trail event the world has ever seen. 70% ethnic minorities, 70% female. These are statistics that haven't been seen in trail running.
Compare that to your experience. Yeah.
I feel like people have got very disconnected with food, and I think it's really, the book originally started because it was just a cookbook, and I wanted to do homemade versions of UPFs because I myself was looking at what I was eating, and I was like, even though I'm healthy, I'm eating lean cuts of meat, still ultra processed. I'm eating, the bagels and the protein bars and everything else to support my training and my lifestyle. But a lot of that was ultra processed. So I wanted to know how to make my own bread rolls, my own wraps. And it was really fun and it was quite interesting. Make my own ketchup, make my own pot noodle. And as I started doing this, I thought, these are really simple recipes that people can get inspired by. We talk about the expense of food and a budget. It can become a bit of a privileged topic when you fall down the rabbit hole a little bit. There's people queuing at food banks and that's the only food they have access to. And probably a lot of that is ultra processed. So we don't want to make them feel like they are doing something wrong or not able to be healthy. But I think what I tried to do is give people lots of different recipes, some that are really cheap, some that, a bit more expensive to prepare, but maybe slightly more interesting, just a wide variety to get people really inspired and get in the kitchen. I think what else is really important to say here is you don't have to give them up completely. And sometimes it's a case of looking at the best of two things that you can buy in a supermarket. I recently did this on a television slot, and it was looking at supermarket buys and how to pick the best ready meal between the two, or instead of a Pringle, buy a good quality ready salted crisp, or instead of a white sliced loaf, if you can afford it, a fresh wholemeal from that bakery part of the supermarket. So sometimes you just have to do what you can within your timescales, your lifestyle and everything else. I wouldn't want this topic to start demonizing food and people thinking you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I eat pizza, I have the odd chocolate bar, and I love a glass of wine. So I would be completely hypocritical, right? So I think it's quite good to take stock of what you've actually got to start with. Like, what's in my cupboards? What can I change? If I've got sugar breakfast cereal, can I make my own granola? If I can't be bothered to make my own granola, maybe I look at making some overnight oats or some porridge, or I look for a cereal that's high in fibre and a better option, lower in sugar. And you can look at the food packets to do that, the food labelling, the front, the back. I think drinks. Definitely, fizzy drinks, things like that. They're a really good one to swap out. I have this big thing with fizzy drinks. People are also against sweeteners, saying, oh, you can't have sweeteners because they're UPF and they're bad for you. So where do you go with that if somebody enjoys a Coke but then they can't have a Diet Coke in their head? So, sparkling water with some fruit and stuff, that's fine, but there are other options on the market that don't contain sweeteners, sugar, the botanical type drinks, stuff like that. I think ready meals, again, I said, maybe have a look at the packet, maybe think about making your own. Instead of buying creamy types of salad dressings that are full of emulsifiers and additives, you could just, something simple, lemon juice, olive oil, a bit of honey and some ginger, and you've got a dressing. The other problem is that these food environments, there's shops selling sweets and chocolate and everything at fractional prices, and it's there all the time. I don't know why we've still got bog-offs on, unhealthy food. Why is fruit and vegetable not subsidised to make it cheaper? There's all this food at kids' height, sweets and chocolate and stuff. The government didn't go forward with the 9 p.m. watershed for kids, advertising for kids' food. There's all this stuff, the reformulations of food. There's a lot of other stuff that could be done that isn't being done. And so it isn't all down to the responsibility of the individual. It's quite hard to make choices when you're bombarded by all this enticing food, enticing you in.
I work with a lot of women in the city in London, and they are women who are, juggling careers, full-on careers, and at the same time, women who perhaps have young children, looking after aging parents. There might have been women who could have managed to juggle all these balls before, but suddenly they just feel like they can't keep up, and something has changed, and they're just not coping the same. So kind of the mental health aspect to it, the feeling, the energy level aspect to it. And then the third will probably be around weight and body shape. And so perhaps they would have tried to lose weight. What would have worked for them earlier on in their 30s actually won't work the same. And I think there's an interesting statistic here around the menopause transition, that even if you are on the same diet,
there is a 7 to 30% increase in something that we call visceral fat, which is basically fat that accumulates around the abdomen. And so we know that with the changing hormones, what happens, Tali, is that our body shape changes, because naturally we're more likely when we're younger to store fat around our hips, but that changes. And around the midlife, we store fat more easily around our abdomen. And we know that actually that is an increased risk for many
and breast cancer.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think the message I really want to get is, a lot of women that I see in my clinic come see me when they are at breaking point. And there's just no need for that. So again, the prevention and the proactiveness of this for me is a message that I really want to land loud and clear. So get to know yourself early and seek support when actually you start feeling like you're needing a little bit more support, because there's no need to wait until you're at breaking point to seek that.
I feel as though in the, alcohol awareness space, we're kind of moving away from it now, but even a few years ago, it almost seemed as if there were only two kinds of drinkers, a normal drinker and an alcoholic. But what we know now is there's that gray area in between where maybe you're only drinking once or twice a week, but it's really negatively affecting you. And so I just saw that as an opportunity. And it's not like I woke up one day and decided, oh yeah, I'm going to pursue this and creating awareness. It's just, as you know, it's just something that evolves over time.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, this grey area of drinking that you talk about. And I think, you've been really honest with your story, but I think you'll probably agree that, and you've mentioned it yourself, the kind of shame, the stigma around talking about struggles with alcohol is such a barrier, despite actually so many people having this issue. And really interestingly, there's a recent alcohol change study that found that 27% of all drinkers in Great Britain actually binge drink on their heaviest drinking days. So that's over 8 units, I think, for men and over 6 for women. And I think that's a pretty decent chunk of society. And as you say, we only generally think about this as a problem if someone loses their livelihood or if they're going into rehab. But that's not everyone's experiences. A lot of those people are fully functioning, as you say, and they kind of sit in that grey area and can be very high achieving, even like you were.
Yeah. Shame can only exist in silence. And so the more we talk about it, the more I've talked about it, the more the shame has lifted. And it's really just about having these conversations like we're having today, talking about it on social media. I remember 5-6 years ago when I was thinking about quitting drinking, there was nothing about this, like nothing about gray area drinking. There was nothing, maybe there was, but it wasn't mainstream as it is today in the papers and in, on social media. And I remember very clearly the first time I ever read an article. It was a Vice article about anxiety, the anxiety you feel after a hangover and some of the science behind that and some people speaking about their experiences. And I literally remember where I was. I was in the US at the time. For those of you who don't know, I was born in the US and I've moved back and forth my whole life. But I was working in a school and I remember reading that Vice article where someone was explaining and articulating what I had been experiencing for like a year and a half by myself, keeping it to myself, not telling anyone. And I remember just feeling so relieved that I wasn't alone, to be able to hear that, oh my God, it's not actually me that's the problem. This is how alcohol interacts with my brain. And that is what the problem is. And so it's interesting to see the balance between how much do we educate and inform versus, turning around to the other side and showing people what life can look like without alcohol and breaking down those beliefs.
Yeah, literally, it is about being empowered, but it's also, that's why I talk about this idea of on the cellular level, is that, I think there's a misunderstanding that people say, well, it's in your genes, isn't it? It's just bad luck. There's
bad luck
about it. Mm. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not. There are very few diseases actually that are entirely ascribable to a genetic malformation. Very, very few. And sadly, if you have those, hopefully you know about it early enough. And even then, it's not like predestined that you will succumb to that disease. There is still a lot you can do to help yourself. But for the majority of diseases, it's got to be more than one thing. There's got to be something going wrong. Your immune system is not able to cope because perhaps it's being assaulted on too many levels. And that's the bit where I think that should be cause for celebration. That should be cause for standing on soapboxes and going, oh my God, you're telling me that, like, even if I have some dodgy genes, I can still do stuff to help myself. And it's like, yes, absolutely can. And it's been proven as well that on a cellular level, even if you have some dodgy genes, there are external things that you can do that will switch off those genes. So it's all possible. It's all possible. But part and parcel of that is actually believing that it's possible and not buying into this pervasive myth that, it's too late. The horse has bolted. I'm surrounded by chemicals. There's nothing I can do. And it's like, no, that's where my phrase about, I want you to be proactive guardians of your health, to believe that it's possible, not passive patients just waiting for someone to patch you up. And there's also the issue that, our healthcare providers, as magnificent as they are not soothsayers. They do not know what is going on in my body as opposed to your body, and just absolutely by some kind of miracle of learning know what to do on every case. We are all individual. So there's also that sense of trying to encourage people to know your own normal, I think is the phrase I used in my first book. It's like, know what feels right for you. So then you can be aware of, you think, you know what, I don't feel quite right. And then to understand the power of diagnostic testing, if possible. But if we underpin all of that with, let's just clear out the known toxins, which, as you said, they're not the obvious stuff. I can't smell it, I can't see it. And it is too easy for people to think, well, if I can't smell it and I can't see it, it's not going to hurt me, is it? And then you go, well, look at the stats. Something's hurting us. But how to deliver all of this in a way that doesn't make just people go, oh my God, I don't want to hear, it's all too awful, there's nothing I can do. I find this research incredibly exciting because it makes me feel like, brilliant, there is something I can do right now at this precise moment. I am not aware that anything is going wrong in my body. So right now, in this beautiful moment, there is loads that I can do. And if something is going a little bit awry, then I am doing my damnedest to get it all cooking back on track again. And I just think, isn't that exciting? Isn't that what we want to share? Isn't that what we want to get out there? And there are things that we can do. So
yeah, and I'm so thrilled you put it that way, because we see it in the same way. It's about having control, being empowered, and not seeing it as a huge obstacle course, but gradual changes, gradual things that we can introduce into our lives, which create a better sense of well-being, but also control over our health. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be Well podcast, brought to you by Breast Cancer UK, a prevention charity supporting people to build healthy, lifelong habits and reduce their risk of developing breast cancer. You can start your personal prevention journey right now by taking our prevention quiz. Just click on the link in the show notes.